news for all the clay artists out there who have been using homemade cold porcelain clay. Polymer clay is super expensive and cold porcelain clay requires a lot of efforts and patience to make. Hence, we are kind of left with very few options. But a few months back, something changed.
Would you be my Valentine? Would you be my Valentine?
Hello. If you're new here, I'm Shri. After saying hello for 10 times and choosing the last one that I just said, I'm just going to take a sip of coffee because I'm tired. I'm a clay and miniature artist from India. Now for the past 1.5 years, I've been creating little clay charms and characters for my tiny clay village called Whimsy. And in case you've watched my previous vlogs, you know that I've been using homemade cold porcelain clay for all my clay creations. Now although I've shared a detailed video about how I make my clay, and there are a bunch of other similar videos created by many different artists about how they make their own clay, I still get a bunch of messages and comments saying that it's pretty difficult. Some of you said that the texture doesn't turn out well, some said it was sticky, and for some others it was cracking while drying. And I get it, it can be very frustrating and irritating when you actually have a lot of work and the clay doesn't turn out well. Even when I started out first, I failed for the first 6 or 7 times, and finally my 8th batch was kind of something that I could use for sculpting. But let's be real, we don't always have that much time as well as resources to keep on experimenting like that. And now that I've started sculpting in bulk for my shop orders, it becomes extremely overwhelming sometimes to make the clay at home, especially when I have a day job to take care of. And I was over the moon when Jenna reached out to me asking if I wanted to try out her clay. And of course, I immediately said yes. In case you guys don't know her, Jenna is one of the OG clay sculpting creators on YouTube out there. Like many of us, she uses her own homemade clay and she just started selling them. I'll let you in on a little secret. Now, before she even reached out to me, I had actually tried her clay. If you guys remember, I mentioned it in my previous video regarding the Straw Baby Snuggle Snouts. If you don't, I'll just cue in the video. Now another little secret behind these two, the Straw Baby Snuggle Snouts this time are not made from the homemade clay. I will be talking about the exact clay that I used for these two in one of my upcoming vlogs. Yep, that's the same clay I used to sculpt our tiny little Straw Baby Snuggle Snout. Now Jenna has 2 different variants of her clay and she was kind to send us both of them. This one is the plain air dry clay and this one is the air dry cold porcelain clay. Now I've already tried both of them, but I thought why not create a separate video where I can create the same character using both these clay and put them side by side so that you guys can see the difference. So today we'll be sculpting our Straw Baby Snuggle Snout once again using both these clay, the cold porcelain one as well as the air dry one. I have my coffee with me as always. Grab your favorite drinks, snuggle in and let's sculpt together.
Wait, hold on, put me together, take me back where I belong. I want it all, I had a feeling but the feeling is all gone. Wait, hold on, put me together, take me back where I belong. I want it all, I had a feeling but the feeling is all gone.
Let's just push it inside. I've been reading this book, by the way. For some reason, cannot finish it for the past 1 month. I guess I want to read it slowly because it's a little difficult for me to understand. I also want to take time while reading this. I just don't want to rush through it. It's that sort of a book. That's why I'm just taking my time with it. Yeah, hopefully I'll finish it this month.
My will is strong to place them in the moment I come back to.
We're nearly over with this, so I got a refill just in case.
Staring at the light home when I return from my skin and bone.
Yeah, we'll most probably be done with this one soon.
Hold on, put me together, take me back where I belong. I want it all.
Having long nails is pretty scary. A lot of people ask me how do I sculpt with long nails. I personally haven't had any issue with them as of yet. because I don't know, they're kind of tiny. They're not that long, are they? I also get a lot of questions asking why do I clean the place so much. All my clay artists know how difficult it is to get rid of dirt, lint and other unwanted elements on your clay charm while you're sculpting, especially with white clay. So that is why I have to spend an hour or so cleaning the workspace before I can even begin sculpting. I guess we're done. This is more than enough. Let's be sure that there's nothing on these things too. I know I'm being paranoid, but it's better to be safe than to be sorry later. We're done. This goes here. You go up. I don't need it now. I forgot to show you guys, but the clay came with a tiny letter. She must have sent this to all the clay artists whom she reached out. It says, Dear Shri Priya Acharya. If you're wondering who is Shri Priya Acharya, that's me. My full name is Shri Priya Acharya. In short, Shreyaji. Yeah. Which I'm sure you guys didn't know. I'm genuinely excited to send this clay your way. I've put a lot of love into making it and it means a lot to share it with you. I'd really love for you to unbox it, feel the texture and just enjoy using it. Your honest thoughts and creative take would mean so much. We'd be so grateful if you share your thoughts with your community on Instagram and YouTube, like unboxing, mixing colors or showing your creation. Would be amazing. And if you tag us, we'd be happy to feature you too. That's great. Thanks for being a part of this little journey. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you make with it. Wishing you endless creating, Jenna. Well, Jenna, I've already tried the clay and I kind of am in love with it. So here I am sharing my experience and showing a little bit of sculpting. I'll be starting off with the air dry clay first. I'm not going to throw this thing because I will be reusing this since this is a Ziploc. I'll just use the clay that I want to and then keep the remaining one inside this wrapper and put it back inside. I'm also not going to be measuring the clay because this is something that I'll keep for myself. I won't be exactly selling it, so it doesn't really matter what the sizes are or if the sizes are different for both the charms because I just want to test the clay out. This is softer touch, pretty soft. You can see I haven't even kneaded the clay, but the teardrop kind of a thing already comes out without me having to do much. So that's a good thing. However, I will still condition the clay because I don't want to take chances. As I've already told you guys, if I do not condition the clay, there might be cracks. Although this seems like a very soft clay, I still don't want to take any chances. The texture of the air dry clay is very similar to homemade cold porcelain clay that we make, but when I open the other bag, you will see the texture for the cold porcelain air dry clay pretty different. That one is much softer. This is a little harder in comparison to that. So I think this will hold its shape better than that one because oftentimes the clays that are way too soft usually change their shape a little. The trouble with air dry clay is this: you have to put the remaining clay inside while you're working on one piece of clay, because if I keep on working on this and don't put it inside, this is going to dry up. That's why I feel air dry clays are pretty difficult to work with in comparison to polymer clay. That's also why I guess polymer clay is costly. This is so therapeutic, I don't know. I've always enjoyed playing around with clay. Do any of you feel like this is kind of a therapy? Because every time, oops, I didn't take off my rings. Yeah, do any of you guys feel like this is kind of like therapy? Because every time I have to condition clay and that's really soft or it's a fresh batch of clay, it's really satisfying. I kind of didn't have to use water. It just turned out to be a smooth circle without any cracks. That's pretty nice. I'll be doing them side by side because first I'll get rid of the white parts of the body and then I'll move on to the colored parts so that I don't have to wash my hands again and again. Well, this is stickier than I thought. I think it'll dry up the moment it comes out. Much more sticky to touch than the other one. If you can see, in my previous batch that I had bought, I faced the same issue too, but it's kind of because it's very soft, so it has to be that way, I guess, and it kind of becomes less and less sticky when you start kneading it. But trust me, this is way too soft, like in comparison to the air dry clay. This is the cold porcelain air dry clay and this feels like a cloud in my hand, to be honest. This is fun. It literally feels like a cotton candy. Look at this. How soft. Now again, if you're someone who has very stubborn fingerprints, then this clay will be difficult to work with. I think this one would be much better for you. I would still recommend you to try even this one once because oh my god, this really feels good. I might just do it for the rest of the day. Sorry, just kidding. The marks of my palm kind of stay here for some time, but they do disappear after I leave them. The clay kind of takes its own shape after some time. That's one difference I noticed while sculpting with the cold porcelain one. I feel like I'm making a bow. Something that you guys might not understand while you're watching it is that I kind of used more pressure while rolling this out and less pressure. Like I have to be a bit more delicate while I'm sculpting using this. If I press too hard or hold it way too tight, it'll have marks because this is a much more softer clay. When I look at both of them right now, they seem completely same. It looks very similar, but when you actually touch them, there's a big difference. This is very similar to my homemade air dry clay, but this is like a delicate, soft stuff. If any of you guys make worry stones, these will be really good to use because worry stones are supposed to be very soft and, you know, satisfying to touch. That's the whole point of them. A lot of you guys ask me what the white powder is that I sprinkle on the glass top. It's Johnson Baby's powder. You can use any talcum powder if you like. I just do it because that makes the surface less sticky. The clay kind of sticks to the glass. I just do it to avoid that. Now that the bodies are done, I'll add a little bit of shade before I sculpt the ears because the ears will go on top of the body, so the shade needs to be there beforehand. I feel like I'm doing a sculpting class. It is not a sculpting class. The patchy look will kind of go away on its own somehow on this cold porcelain one because look, even this one was kind of patchy like this when I was adding the shade, but when it dried away, it kind of looked so uniform and glossy. It sort of got this faded look on its own once the clay charm dried. So yeah, the patchy look will go away. For some reason, this looks like a snack or something, like a sweet bun. You have no clue how gentle I am with the brush because if I even put a little bit of pressure, this is going to get marks. Okay, time for the scary part because I've never done it with this one. Let me just mix it up. Oh, this is not that patchy. This is not that scary. This also turned out well. Oh, I guess you guys can't see a close-up. Let me just bring it closer. One issue I always have while sculpting with the white clay charms is the bottom. It always gets dirty. These tiny dusty small particles of the color that I just scraped out, they just stay here and they are not really visible, and I often slide these away. When I do that, the bottom always gets dirty. I kind of get rid of it by just using rubbing alcohol, but I try and avoid it whenever I can. This is much more darker than that one. Again, I think it's because it gives a porcelain kind of a look, and this one is much more opaque. I'm not even sure if I used the correct word, but I hope you guys understand. This is not that glossy or transparent. This gives a very transparent and glossy look.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. But all complexions that I adore, so hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I dream on to someday find that.
I wouldn't recommend using liquid food colors for the cold porcelain one. Just use your pastel colors, because being soft kind of makes it more vulnerable to being sticky. If I add anything that's liquid, we'll just stick to our dry pastel colors. So in a nutshell, the air dry variant of clay mixes pretty well with the liquid food color, and the cold porcelain air dry clay mixes very good with the soft pastel colors. At least that's my experience.
Forevermore, I like to share that vintage dream.
For some final result talks. There are two major differences here. First is the shape. In case you noticed, while I was sculpting the bodies, the shapes were identical at first. However, the one made from cold porcelain clay changed a bit as it dried. It kind of settled down or slouched slightly. That's slightly because of its extremely soft texture. On the other hand, the plain air dry clay held its shape, obviously because it has a firmer consistency. The second difference is how shaded colors show up on the surface. The cold porcelain clay becomes translucent as it dries, which gives this beautiful soft faded color effect. It really lives up to its name. It has that delicate porcelain-like finish. I genuinely love both, but I'm especially excited about the porcelain one because it's a completely new texture for me and the final result just feels so unique. So basically, use the normal air dry clay if you need sharper shapes, firmer texture, or in case you find difficulty sculpting with light pressure and have stubborn fingerprints. And go for the cold porcelain clay when you want a softer, glassy, more delicate porcelain look. Now I know a lot of you must have one question. Will I stop making my own clay? Not entirely, because as some of you guys already know, I make my colored batches of air dry clay and I need some very specific colors to create a few of my characters, and those colors cannot be different from what I already have been creating. To keep that consistency, I think in case of my air dry clay, I will stick to the color variants that I make at home, and maybe I'll just opt out for her white air dry clay. But for my Snuggle Snout collection, I am definitely switching to her cold porcelain clay. It looks stunning, feels premium, as well as it'll save me a bunch of time. So why not? And in case in future she comes up with more variants of colors, then maybe I'll make a full switch. As for you guys, I hope seeing this process gave you a little idea and some information about how the process is going to be. But I would say don't just listen to me, because every every other clay artist has a different preference, and it's pretty subjective depending on the kind of characters they make or the kind of texture they prefer. So what I would recommend is just get the smallest batch from both her variants, preferably the white colored ones, and see how it feels and turns out when mixed with colors. And that shall give you a pretty decent idea whether it's suitable for your sculpting style or not. So basically make a few little charms, some test pieces, and see how it feels in your hands. And in case you tried out the clay, I'd love to hear your experience, good or bad. You can drop it in the comment section or send me emails, as well as reach out to me on Instagram through DMs. That's all for today. I will see you guys very soon. Until then, stay cozy. Bye for now.
A little different than all the rest. Quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess.